The fluorescent lights of Mercy General Hospital buzzed overhead like angry insects. Nora Bennett sat in the small chapel, her head bowed, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The smell of antiseptic and old prayer books filled the air. She had been here for 6 hours straight, ever since the doctors had rushed her mother into emergency surgery. The words of the surgeon still echoed in her mind like a death sentence. Critical condition. Do everything we can. Prepare yourself. She was 26 years old and had already lived a lifetime of struggles. 3 jobs barely covered the mounting medical bills. Her small apartment had become a place she only saw in the dark hours before dawn. Sleep was a luxury she could not afford. But none of that mattered now. All that mattered was the woman lying in the intensive care unit, fighting for every breath. The weight of silence. Nora's eyes burned with unshed tears. She refused to cry. Not here, not now. Crying meant accepting that she might lose the only person who had ever truly loved her. Her mother had raised her alone after her father left when Nora was just 5. They had survived evictions, hunger, and countless hardships together. Her mother had worked herself to exhaustion to give Nora a chance at a better life. And now, when her mother needed her most, Nora felt helpless. The chapel door creaked open behind her. She did not turn around. Visitors came and went in this place of desperate hope. She heard footsteps, measured and confident, approaching slowly. Then they stopped. The silence stretched between them like a held breath. Nora kept her eyes fixed on the simple wooden cross at the front of the chapel. She did not have the energy for polite conversation with strangers. A cry that broke through. But then the weight of it all crashed over her like a wave. The exhaustion, the fear, the crushing certainty that no matter how hard she worked, it would never be enough. A sound escaped her throat, raw and broken. It was not a sob. It was something deeper. A cry that came from the very core of her being. A sound of pure, unfiltered anguish that she had been holding back for weeks. The footsteps moved closer. She felt a presence beside her, warm and solid. A voice spoke, deep and gentle. "Are you all right?" The question was absurd. Of course she was not all right. Her world was falling apart. But something in his tone made her look up. The man who stopped Vincent Mercer stood beside the pew, his expensive suit looking out of place in the humble chapel. He was tall, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples. His face was handsome in a weathered way, with lines that spoke of both laughter and loss. His eyes, a striking shade of gray, held genuine concern. He did not have the look of someone who was here for a quick prayer before rushing back to his comfortable life. He looked like someone who knew what it meant to hurt. Nora wiped her face quickly, embarrassed. "I am fine, thank you." Her voice came out rougher than she intended. She turned away, hoping he would leave. But Vincent did not move. He stood there, patient and still, as if he had all the time in the world. Breaking the distance, "May I sit?" he asked softly. Nora hesitated, then nodded. What else could she do? The pew was not hers to guard. Vincent sat down, keeping a respectful distance. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he let the silence settle between them, comfortable and undemanding. Nora found herself relaxing slightly. There was something different about him. He did not rush to fill the quiet with meaningless words. "My mother," Nora heard herself say, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "She is in surgery. They do not know if she will make it." Her voice cracked on the last word. Vincent turned to look at her, and she saw real compassion in his eyes. Not pity, not the awkward sympathy that most people offered, but genuine understanding. "I am sorry," he said simply. Those 2 words, spoken with such sincerity, broke something inside her. The tears she had been holding back began to fall. She covered her face with her hands, ashamed of her weakness. But Vincent did not turn away. He reached into his pocket and handed her a handkerchief. It was soft, expensive, with his initials embroidered in the corner. A moment of truth. Nora took it, pressing it against her eyes. "Thank you." She took a shaky breath. "I should not be falling apart like this." Vincent shook his head. "You are allowed to feel what you feel. This is the place for it." His words were simple, but they gave her permission to be human. They sat in silence for several minutes. Nora felt the weight of his presence beside her, steady and comforting. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Vincent asked finally. The question caught her off guard. She looked at him properly for the first time. He was not young, perhaps in his early 40s, with a face that had seen both triumph and tragedy. There was wealth in every detail of his appearance, from his tailored suit to his leather shoes. But his eyes held no arrogance, only kindness, pride and refusal. Nora straightened her spine. "No, thank you, but no. I will manage." Vincent studied her face, seeing the pride and determination there. He did not push. Instead, he pulled out a card from his wallet and placed it on the pew between them. "If you change your mind—" "My name is Vincent." Nora looked at the card. "Vincent Mercer." The name was vaguely familiar, though she could not place it. She did not reach for it. "I do not need charity," she said quietly but firmly. Vincent smiled, a sad, understanding smile. "It is not charity. It is one human being offering help to another. But I respect your choice." He stood up, straightening his jacket. "I hope your mother recovers. I truly do." He turned to leave, then paused. "What is your name?" "Nora," she replied, surprising herself. "Nora Bennett." Vincent repeated her name softly, as if committing it to memory. "Take care, Nora Bennett." And then he was gone, his footsteps fading down the corridor. Nora sat alone again, the handkerchief still clutched in her hand. She looked at the card he had left behind. Part of her wanted to tear it up to prove she did not need anyone, but something stopped her. Instead, she slipped it into her pocket. The seed-planted Vincent Mercer walked through the hospital corridors, his mind still in that chapel. He had come to Mercy General for a charity event, a photo opportunity for the new wing his foundation had funded. He had posed for pictures, shaken hands, said all the right things. He had been about to leave when he heard it. That cry. It had stopped him in his tracks. In all his years of success and wealth, he had heard many sounds. But that cry was different. It was the sound of someone breaking, and it had reached into his chest and grabbed his heart. He had built an empire from nothing. He had lost people he loved. He knew what real pain looked like, and he had seen it in Nora Bennett's eyes. There was something about her that refused to leave his mind. Her pride. Her strength. The way she had refused his help even when she clearly needed it. She was not like the people who usually surrounded him, always wanting something, always calculating. Vincent reached his car, but he did not get in. He stood in the parking lot looking back at the hospital. He had a feeling that this was not the end. Something had shifted in that chapel. Something neither of them fully understood yet. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain. Vincent made a decision. He pulled out his phone and made a call. By the time he drove away, arrangements had been made. Anonymous donations. The best doctors. Whatever Nora Bennett needed. She did not have to know it was him. Because sometimes love begins not with a grand gesture, but with a simple act of hearing someone's pain. And Vincent Mercer had heard Nora Bennett, and that sound had changed something in him. Something he thought had died long ago had stirred back to life. Hope. 3 days after that night in the chapel, Nora stood in the hospital administrator's office, completely confused. The woman behind the desk wore a professional smile that revealed nothing. "Miss Bennett, I am pleased to inform you that your mother's medical bills have been taken care of. All of them." Nora felt the blood drain from her face. "What? That is impossible. I have not paid anything yet." The administrator checked her computer screen. "An anonymous donor has covered all expenses. Past, present, and future treatment. Your mother will receive the best care available." Nora gripped the edge of the desk. "Who? I need to know who did this." The woman shook her head. "The donor requested complete anonymity. I am not at liberty to say, but I can tell you that your mother is being moved to a private room with round-the-clock specialist care." Nora's mind raced. Anonymous donor. She reached into her purse and pulled out the business card she had kept. Vincent Mercer. It had to be him. Anger and gratitude warred inside her chest. She had told him no. She had been clear. And yet he had gone behind her back and done this anyway. Part of her wanted to scream at the violation of her wishes. But another part, the exhausted, terrified part, felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly brought her to her knees. Confrontation at dawn. Nora found him 2 days later. She had called the number on his card and demanded to know where he would be. His assistant, surprised by her intensity, had mentioned he jogged every morning in Riverside Park. So Nora went there at dawn, still wearing her waitress uniform from the night shift. her eyes burning from lack of sleep. She spotted him on a bench, drinking water after his run. He looked different in casual clothes, more human somehow. When he saw her approaching, something flickered across his face, recognition, pleasure, and then concern when he saw her expression. Nora stopped in front of him, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You had no right." Her voice shook with emotion. Vincent stood slowly, his expression calm. "Your mother needed help." "No," Nora cut him off. "I needed to do this myself. I needed to take care of her. That is what daughters do." Vincent met her gaze steadily. "And what happens when you work yourself to death trying? Who takes care of her then?" The wall begins to crack. The question hit Nora like a physical blow. She had not let herself think about that. About what would happen if she collapsed from exhaustion. About what her mother would do without her. Tears of frustration burned in her eyes. "You do not understand. I have spent my whole life being helped, pitied, looked down on. I wanted to be strong enough this time. I wanted to be enough." Vincent took a step closer, his voice gentle. "You are enough. You have always been enough. This is not about you being weak. This is about letting someone care. About accepting that you do not have to carry everything alone." Nora shook her head, but the anger was draining out of her. She felt tired. So tired, why? "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Vincent's gray eyes held hers. "Because I heard you, in that chapel, and I could not forget." Nora felt something shift inside her chest. The wall she had built around her heart developed a crack. She sank down onto the bench, her legs suddenly weak. "I do not know how to accept this." Vincent sat beside her, keeping a small distance between them. "Then let me show you. Let me buy you coffee. Just coffee. One conversation. That is all I ask. Coffee and confessions." They began meeting at a small diner called Rosie's, 3 blocks from the hospital. It became their place. Every morning at 7, before Nora started her shift at the bookstore, Vincent would be waiting in the corner booth with 2 cups of coffee. He never asked about the money. Never brought up his wealth. Instead, they talked about everything else. Nora learned that Vincent had lost his wife to cancer 5 years ago. That he had built his business empire to honor her memory, channeling his grief into helping others. That he woke up some mornings still reaching for her, forgetting for a moment that she was gone. His honesty broke down her defenses piece by piece. She told him about her father leaving, about the nights she went to bed hungry so her mother could eat, about the scholarship she had lost when her mother got sick and she had to drop out of college, about the dreams she had buried under the weight of survival. Vincent listened without judgment, without trying to fix everything. He just listened, and that meant more than any amount of money. When everything changed. 6 weeks after their first meeting in the chapel, Nora's mother woke up. The doctors called it remarkable. Nora called it a miracle. She was at the hospital when it happened, holding her mother's hand, when those beloved eyes finally opened. "Mom," Nora's voice broke. "I am here. I am right here." Her mother's voice was weak but clear. "My sweet girl." "What happened? Where am I?" Nora explained everything through her tears. Her mother listened, squeezing her daughter's hand. Then she asked, "Who is Vincent?" Nora's breath caught. "How did you know?" "Even unconscious, a mother knows," her mom whispered. "Tell me about him." So Nora did. She told her mother about the man who had stopped in the chapel, about the coffee meetings, about how he made her laugh when she thought she had forgotten how, about how he looked at her like she was something precious. Her mother smiled weakly. "Bring him to me. I want to meet the man who brought light back to my daughter's eyes." The kiss that sealed everything. Nora brought Vincent to the hospital that evening. He came with flowers and a genuine nervous smile. Her mother studied him with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "So you are the one." Vincent nodded. "I am. And I promise you my intentions are honorable." Nora's mother laughed, a sound that made Nora's heart soar. "Good. Because my daughter deserves someone who will stand beside her, not in front of her or behind her." "Beside her." Vincent's gaze shifted to Nora. "I understand. That is all I want." Later, as they walked through the hospital gardens, the spring air sweet with blooming flowers, Vincent stopped. Nora turned to him questioningly. He reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I am falling in love with you, Nora Bennett. I thought you should know." Nora's heart hammered in her chest. She should have been scared, should have pulled away, but instead she leaned forward and kissed him. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like a question. Then deeper, as Vincent's arms came around her and pulled her close. It was a kiss that tasted of coffee and hope, a kiss that promised tomorrow. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Nora rested her forehead against his. "I am falling too. It terrifies me." Vincent smiled against her hair. "Then we will fall together." The shadow that returned for 3 perfect weeks, Nora allowed herself to believe in happiness. Vincent met her mother several more times. They went on real dates. He took her to places she had only dreamed of. And through it all, he treated her like an equal, never making her feel small or indebted. But happiness, Nora had learned, was a fragile thing. She was at Vincent's office building, bringing him lunch as a surprise when she saw her. A woman stepped out of the elevator. She was stunning, with perfect hair and designer clothes. She moved like she owned the world. And the way she smiled when she saw Vincent made Nora's blood run cold. Vincent. "Darling, I am back." Nora watched from around the corner as the woman embraced Vincent. He looked shocked, uncomfortable. The woman was talking rapidly, her hand on his arm. Nora heard fragments. "I made a mistake. We belong together. Give me another chance." Vincent was shaking his head, but the woman persisted. "You loved me once. You can love me again." Nora did not wait to hear his response. She turned and ran, the lunch bag falling forgotten from her hands. She ran through the streets, her vision blurred with tears. She had been a fool, a poor girl playing at being a princess. Of course, someone like Vincent had a past. Of course, there were women in his world who belonged there, who fit. Women who were not broken and struggling. Women who were enough without needing to prove it. The breaking point, she made it to the park before she collapsed on a bench, sobbing. Her phone rang. Vincent's name flashed on the screen. She declined the call. It rang again and again. Finally, she turned it off. She sat there as the sun set, as the park emptied, as the world moved on around her. And she made a decision. She had to let him go, before he realized what she had known all along, that she was not meant for his world, that this had been a beautiful dream, but dreams always ended. When she finally went home, there were 17 missed calls from Vincent. She deleted them all. Then she lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling, feeling the crack in her heart widen into a chasm. Tomorrow she would be strong again. Tomorrow she would rebuild her walls. But tonight she let herself break, because loving Vincent Mercer had been the bravest, most foolish thing she had ever done. And walking away from him would require every ounce of courage she had left. Vincent Mercer had faced many challenges in his life. He had built companies, negotiated impossible deals, survived the loss of his wife. But nothing had prepared him for the terror of losing Nora. She had vanished. Her phone was off. She was not at the hospital. Not at any of her jobs. It was as if she had disappeared into thin air. He stood in his office, staring at the lunch bag she had dropped. The sandwiches were still inside, carefully wrapped. She had made them herself. That detail broke something inside him. He turned to his assistant. "Find her. I do not care what it takes." His voice was raw with desperation, but it was not his assistant who found the answer. It was Cassandra, his ex-fiancée, who walked back into his office with guilt written across her face. "She saw what I did to you. I am sorry, Vincent. I should never have come back. I was selfish." Vincent's jaw tightened. "What did you say to her?" "Nothing. But she heard me asking for another chance. She ran before you could explain." Vincent sank into his chair, his head in his hands. He knew exactly what Nora must have thought. She had seen him with a woman from his past, a woman who fit his world, and she had assumed the worst. Because that was what people had taught her, that she was not enough, that happiness was not meant for girls like her. And he had not been fast enough to stop her from believing that lie. A mother's wisdom. That evening, Vincent went to the hospital. If Nora would not answer his calls, perhaps her mother would listen. He found Mrs. Bennett sitting up in bed, looking stronger than she had in months. She took one look at his face and gestured to the chair beside her bed. "Sit down, young man. You look terrible." Vincent sat, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "She ran from me, and I cannot find her." Mrs. Bennett nodded slowly. "My daughter has been running her whole life, from pain, from disappointment, from anything that might hurt her. But I never thought she would run from love." Vincent looked up sharply. "It is love. I love her. I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to her." Mrs. Bennett smiled. "I know. I saw it in your eyes the first time you visited. But Nora has been hurt so many times. She builds walls to protect herself. You need to show her that your love is strong enough to break through them." Vincent leaned forward. "Tell me where she is, please." Mrs. Bennett studied him for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "Go to where you first met. Not here. Before here. That is where her heart will take her." The chapel of second chances Vincent understood immediately. The chapel. He ran through the hospital corridors, ignoring the startled looks from nurses and visitors. When he reached the small chapel, he stopped in the doorway. Nora sat in the same pew where he had found her months ago. Her head was bowed, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Nora. His voice was gentle but firm. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Go away, Vincent. Please. Just go away." He walked down the aisle and sat beside her, exactly where he had sat that first night. "I'm not going anywhere. Not until you hear the truth." "There is nothing to hear." Nora's voice was thick with tears. "I saw her. I saw the kind of woman who belongs in your world, and I know I am not her. I will never be her." Vincent turned to face her fully. "You are right. You will never be her, because you are so much more." Nora shook her head, but Vincent caught her hands in his. "Listen to me. Really listen. The truth spoken aloud, Cassandra was my past. She left me 3 years ago because she said I was too focused on my grief, too distant. She was right. I was not ready to love anyone. But then I heard you crying in this chapel, and something inside me woke up." Vincent's grip tightened on her. "Hands! You brought me back to life, Nora. You, with your strength and your stubbornness and your beautiful, guarded heart." Nora's tears fell faster. "But I have nothing to offer you. No money, no connections, no status." Vincent smiled through his own tears. "You have everything that matters. You have courage. You have loyalty. You have a heart that loves so fiercely it scares you. And you have me, if you want me. I do not care about the rest." The chapel door opened behind them. Nora's mother stood there, supported by a nurse. She had insisted on coming despite doctors' orders. She walked slowly down the aisle and stood before them. "Vincent Mercer, do you love my daughter?" Vincent stood immediately. "With everything I am. Will you protect her heart?" "Always." "Will you stand beside her as an equal through whatever life brings?" Vincent looked directly at Nora as he answered. "For the rest of my life, I promise." Mrs. Bennett nodded, satisfied. "Then you have my blessing. Now stop being stubborn, Nora, and accept the love you deserve." She turned to the nurse. "Take me back before the doctors have my head." She paused at the door. "Oh, and Vincent?" "Yes, ma'am?" "My daughter likes simple things. Remember that. A promise in the sacred space." After her mother left, silence filled the chapel. Nora stared at her hands, still held in Vincent's. "I am scared." Her voice was barely a whisper. Of what? Of losing this, of waking up and finding out it was all a dream, of not being strong enough to be what you need. Vincent lifted her, chin gently until their eyes met, then be scared with me. Because I am terrified too. I am terrified of losing you, of saying the wrong thing, of not being enough for you. But I would rather be scared with you than safe without you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Nora's breath caught. This is not how I planned this. I had a whole speech prepared. A fancy restaurant. But your mother was right. You like simple things. Vincent opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band with a single small diamond. It was not the biggest or the flashiest ring, but it was perfect. Nora Bennett, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how extraordinary you are? Will you build a life with me here in the real world where we both belong? The answer. That changed everything. Nora looked at the ring, then at Vincent, then at the chapel around them. This place had witnessed her darkest moment, the moment when she had broken completely, and now it was witnessing her brightest one, the moment when she chose to believe in love. Yes. Her voice grew stronger. Yes, I will marry you. Vincent slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It was a kiss filled with promise and hope and healing. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying and laughing at the same time. I love you, Nora whispered. I am still scared, but I love you. Vincent rested his forehead against hers. Good, because love without fear is not really love at all. It means we have something worth protecting. They stayed in the chapel for a long time, holding each other, making quiet promises. The city moved on outside, indifferent to the miracle happening within these walls. But for Nora and Vincent, time had stopped. This was their moment, their beginning. 6 months later. The wedding was small, just as Nora wanted. They held it in the hospital chapel, the place where their story had truly begun. Mrs. Bennett, now fully recovered, walked her daughter down the short aisle. Vincent stood at the front, his eyes never leaving Nora's face. She wore a simple white dress that made her look like an angel. When the minister asked if anyone objected, Cassandra, sitting in the back row as a gesture of closure, smiled and remained silent. She had found her own path forward. This was Vincent and Nora's time. The vows they spoke were their own. Vincent promised to always hear her, even when she could not find words. Nora promised to let herself be loved, even when she felt unworthy. As they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, hand in hand, Nora looked up at Vincent. Thank you. For what? For stopping that night. For hearing my cry. For not giving up on me. Vincent brought her hand to his lips. Your cry stopped me in my tracks, Nora Mercer. And that moment changed both our lives. It was not just you who was saved that night. It was me too. They stepped out into the sunshine, into a future filled with possibility. Behind them, the chapel stood quiet and sacred, having witnessed one more miracle. Because sometimes love finds us in our darkest moments. And sometimes the sound of a breaking heart is really the sound of a new beginning. And Nora and Vincent had found theirs, together.